The Perfumer's Gift. Chapter 1. The Grumpy Perfumer. Mr. Hargrove was a perfumer. He made perfumes in his small shop. This shop was in a little village in Europe. Mr. Hargrove was very good at making perfumes. His perfumes were the best in the village. People loved the sweet smells. But Mr. Hargrove was not a happy man. He never smiled. He never said, "Thank you," or "Please." He only wanted to sell his perfumes and make money. Every morning, Mr. Hargrove woke up early. He walked to his shop. He opened the door and looked at the bottles of perfume. Each bottle was special. He made them all by himself. One day, Mr. Hargrove stood at the door of his shop. He saw people walking by. They stopped and smelled the sweet perfumes in the air. The perfumes smelled like flowers, fruits, and fresh air. Mr. Hargrove frowned. He thought, "These people are smelling my perfumes for free. They should pay me for this." A little girl named Emma walked by. She stopped and took a deep breath. It smells so nice," she said with a big smile. Mr. Hargrove looked at her and said, "Do you want to buy some perfume, little girl?" Emma shook her head. "No, sir. I just like the smell. It's so pretty." Mr. Hargrove felt angry. He thought, "This is not fair. She is enjoying my perfumes for free." In the afternoon, an old man named Mr. Brown came to the shop. He wanted to buy a bottle of perfume for his wife. "Hello, Mr. Hargrove. Can I have a bottle of your best perfume, please?" Mr. Brown asked with a kind smile. Mr. Hargrove did not smile back. He gave Mr. Brown the perfume and took his money. "Here is your perfume," he said. "Goodbye." Mr. Brown felt a little sad. He liked Mr. Hargrove's perfumes, but he did not like Mr. Hargrove's frown. Later, Mr. Hargrove looked out of the shop window. He saw a young artist named Clara. She was standing outside the shop. She closed her eyes and smelled the perfumes. She looked happy. Mr. Hargrove thought, "Why is she happy? She did not pay for the smell." He felt more and more angry. "Hey, you! What are you doing?" Mr. Hargrove shouted. Clara opened her eyes. She smiled and said, "Hello, Mr. Hargrove. I am just enjoying the lovely smells." "Do you want to buy a perfume?" Mr. Hargrove asked. "No, thank you," Clara said. "I don't have much money, but your perfumes make me happy." Mr. Hargrove felt very angry. He thought, "How can I make these people pay for smelling my perfumes?" That night, Mr. Hargrove could not sleep. He kept thinking about people smelling his perfumes for free. He thought, "I must find a way to make them pay." Chapter 2. The Perfumer's Discontent. The next day, Mr. Hargrove opened his shop early in the morning. The air was cold, but his shop was warm and filled with sweet smells. He sat down at his work table and started making a new perfume. He mixed flowers, fruits, and special oils. The smell was wonderful, but Mr. Hargrove did not smile. He was thinking about the people outside. In the afternoon, Clara, the young artist, came back. She stood outside the shop, smelling the sweet air. She close at her ease and smiled. Mr. Hargrove saw her and felt his anger growing. He went outside and said, "Clara, why do you come here if you don't buy anything?" Clara opened her eyes and said, "Mr. Hargrove, your perfumes make me happy. I love the smell. I don't have money, but I enjoy the air." Mr. Hargrove felt very angry. He shouted, "You must pay for the smells! You are stealing from me!" Clara looked surprised and sad. She said, "Mr. Hargrove, I am not stealing. I am just enjoying the air. Smells are free." That night, Mr. Hargrove could not sleep again. He kept thinking about how to make people pay for smelling his perfumes. He thought, "Maybe I can put the smells in bottles and sell them. Then no one will get them for free." Mr. Hargrove's mind was full of ideas, but his heart was still full of anger. Chapter 3. The Curious Artist. Early in the morning, Mr. Hargrove opened his shop. The air was cold, but the shop was warm and filled with the lovely smells of his perfumes. As he worked, he heard someone outside. It was Clara, the young artist. She was standing outside the shop, smiling and enjoying the sweet smells. Mr. Hargrove felt angry again. He thought, "Why does she come here every day and enjoy my perfumes for free?" Clara saw Mr. Hargrove and waved. "Good morning, Mr. Hargrove," she said with a big smile. Mr. Hargrove did not smile back. He walked to the door and opened it. "Clara, why do you come here if you don't buy anything?" he asked, frowning. Clara looked at Mr. Hargrove and said, "Mr. Hargrove, your perfumes make me happy. I love the smell. I don't have money to buy perfume, but I can still enjoy the air." Mr. Hargrove felt his anger growing. He said, "You are stealing from me, Clara. You must pay for the smells." Clara looked surprised and sad. She said, "Mr. Hargrove, I am not stealing. I am just enjoying the air. Smells are free." Mr. Hargrove shook his head. "No, they are not free when they come from my shop. You must pay or you must go." Clara did not know what to say. She felt sad and confused. "Mr. Hargrove, I don't have money, but I love your perfumes. They make me feel happy and inspired." Mr. Hargrove did not care. He said, "If you don't have money, then you cannot enjoy the smells. Go away, Clara." Clara felt a tear in her eye. She walked away slowly, feeling very sad. She loved the smells, but she did not want to make Mr. Hargrove angry. The next day, Clara came back. She stood a little farther from the shop, hoping Mr. Hargrove would not see her. She closed her eyes and smelled the sweet air. But Mr. Hargrove saw her. He felt very angry. He thought, "This cannot go on. I must do something." He walked outside and shouted, "Clara, I told you to go away. Why are you here again?" Clara opened her eyes and said, "Mr. Hargrove, I am sorry. The smells make me feel happy." Mr. Hargrove said, "If you don't leave, I will call the village elder. You must pay for the smells." Clara felt very scared. She did not want trouble. She said, "Please, Mr. Hargrove, don't call the elderly. I will go now." But Mr. Hargrove was very angry. He said, "No, Clara, you must learn. Come with me to see Mr. Thompson, the village elder." Clara felt very sad and scared. She followed Mr. Hargrove to Mr. Thompson's house. It was early in the morning, and the air was cold. Mr. Hargrove knocked on the door. After a few minutes, Mr. Thompson opened the door. He was in his night clothes and looked very sleepy. "Mr. Hargrove, Clara, what is the matter?" Mr. Thompson asked. Mr. Hargrove said, "Mr. Thompson, Clara is stealing the smells from my shop. She enjoys them for free. She must pay." Mr. Thompson looked surprised. He said, "Come in and tell me the whole story. But first, let me get dressed." Mr. Thompson went inside to dress. Clara and Mr. Hargrove waited outside. Clara felt very scared and sad. She did not know what would happen. When Mr. Thompson came back, he invited them inside. They all sat down at a big table. Mr. Thompson said, "Now tell me everything from the beginning." Mr. Hargrove started to tell his story. He was angry and upset. Clara listened quietly, feeling very nervous. She hoped Mr. Thompson would understand. Mr. Thompson listened carefully to Mr. Hargrove. He wanted to hear both sides of the story. Chapter 4. The Solution. Mr. Hargrove took a deep breath. "Mr. Thompson, I work very hard to make my perfumes. They are the best in the village, but people like Clara come and smell them for free. It's not fair." Mr. Thompson nodded. "I see. And Clara, what do you have to say?" Clara looked at Mr. Thompson with sad eyes. "Mr. Thompson, I love the smells from Mr. Hargrove's shop. They make me happy and give me ideas for my art. I don't have money to buy the perfumes, but I thought smelling the air was free." Mr. Thompson thought for a moment. He could see that Mr. Hargrove was very serious about his perfumes, and Clara was very sincere about her love for the smells. Mr. Hargrove, Mr. Thompson said, can you explain why you feel people should pay for the smells in the air? Mr. Hargrove frowned. Because the smells are from my hard work. People should pay for what they enjoy. It is like stealing when they enjoy the smells for free. Mr. Thompson nodded again. And Clara, why do you feel the smells should be free? Clara took a deep breath. Mr. Thompson, the air is free for everyone. I did not take any perfume. I only enjoyed the smell. It made me feel happy and inspired. Mr. Thompson smiled kindly at Clara. I understand, Clara, but we must find a way to make this fair for both of you. Mr. Hargrove and Clara looked at Mr. Thompson, hoping he would have a good solution. Mr. Thompson smiled and said, I have a solution. It may seem strange, but I think it will work. Mr. Hargrove and Clara looked at each other, curious about Mr. Thompson's idea. Clara, Mr. Thompson said, please give me the few coins you have. Clara handed her coins to Mr. Thompson. He held them in his hand and then looked at Mr. Hargrove. Mr. Hargrove, Mr. Thompson said, you feel that the smells from your shop have value and people should pay for them, so I will make a fair trade. Mr. Thompson shook the coins in his hand. They made a nice, clear sound. Mr. Hargrove, Mr. Thompson said, the smell of your perfume is like music to the nose, and the sound of these coins is like music to the ears. Clara will give you the sound of the coins to pay for the smell of your perfumes. Mr. Hargrove looked surprised. The sound of the coins? He asked. Yes, Mr. Thompson said. The sound of the coins will be the payment for the smell of your perfumes. This way, Clara can enjoy the smells, and you can enjoy the sound. Mr. Hargrove thought about it. He realized that the sound of the coins was a fair way to pay for the smells. He smiled a little and said, I understand, Mr. Thompson. The sound of the coins is a fair trade for the smells. Mr. Thompson smiled and gave the coins back to Clara. Clara, you can keep your coins. Mr. Hargrove will be paid with the sound. Clara smiled brightly. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Thank you, Mr. Hargrove. Mr. Hargrove smiled too. You are welcome, Clara. Enjoy the smells, and maybe one day you will buy a perfume. Mr. Thompson said, I am happy we found a fair solution. Remember, sometimes we need to think in new ways to solve our problems. Mr. Hargrove and Clara left Mr. Thompson's house feeling happy. They both learned something important that day. Mr. Hargrove learned to see the value in different ways, and Clara learned that fairness can come in many forms. As they walked back to the village, Mr. Hargrove said to Clara, You can come and smell the perfumes anytime, Clara. I am happy to share the joy they bring. Clara smiled and said, Thank you, Mr. Hargrove. Your perfumes are the best, and I am glad we can both enjoy them. From that day on, Mr. Hargrove was not so grumpy anymore. He smiled more often, and the village people noticed. They all felt that the village was a happier place. The end. The story is aligned with the A1 level of the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, CEFR, which is the beginner level. Here are 5 words, phrases from the story, along with their meanings and examples from both the story and real life. 1. Perfume. Meaning: a liquid substance that people put on their bodies to smell nice. Example from the story: Mr. Hargrove took the bottle of rose perfume and handed it to Clara. Real-life example: she put on her favorite perfume before going to the party. 2. Share. Meaning: to give a part of something to others. Example from the story: I have learned that sharing makes everything better. Real-life example: he shared his lunch with his friend who forgot to bring food. 3. Village. Meaning: a small community of people living in a rural area. Example from the story: Mr. Hargrove's shop had become the heart of the village. Real-life example: the village was quiet and peaceful, surrounded by green fields. 4. Gift. meaning something given willingly to someone without payment, a present. Example from the story. Your painting made my shop beautiful. I am glad we can share our gifts with each other. Real-life example. She received a beautiful gift for her birthday. 5. Joy, meaning a feeling of great pleasure and happiness. Example from the story. He felt a deep sense of joy. Real-life example. The children shouted with joy when they saw the ice cream truck. Here are 3 lessons that readers can learn from the story. 1. The importance of sharing. 2. Kindness brings happiness. 3. Appreciating simple pleasures. This story and voiceover have been provided by English Made Easy. Learn through stories. Copying or re-uploading is strictly prohibited.